Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1280, written by MrHellaFreshh. I dodged the Grim Reaper's Scythe. I was 18 at the time, having just finished high school and went with my friends to the beach on our motorcycles. 18 is a legal driving age. A friend had just gotten his bike modified and recommended that I take it for a spin. Stupid 18-year-old me said sure, left my helmet behind and got on with shorts and a t-shirt. Note here that it was the second time driving that bike and it had no ABS, automatic braking system. I was driving for like 10 minutes on a straight country road and eventually decided to head back. On my way there, I was really speeding, stupid 18-year-old me, and decided to overtake the car in front, gear down, revving, and just as I'm approaching to overtake, the driver decides to do a U-turn out of the blue. I do not recall much from my reaction. I slammed on the brakes and then saw a sort of flashback of my family's faces, thinking that I would never see them again. Then, some seconds later, I realized that I stopped, literally a yard or two away from the driver's door, and she was eyes wide, staring frozen at me. I recalled the time of overtaking the car and my speed, and honestly, I cannot tell how I did not die there. This changed my life, the way I think, and gives me the chills every time. Case notes file 1280. I dodged the Grim Reaper's Scythe. Right, quantum immortality stories never cease to excite me. Completely resetting your experience to a universe where the same mistake that you made in the first one was avoided. The tragic fate that befell you where you originally came from was spared. It doesn't change the horrors those you love will face, though. They still have to grieve for a loss they believe is permanent and irreparable. And for that, I still live very cautiously myself. Even though I believe in quantum immortality to 99.99%, I don't want anyone in this universe that loves me to miss me if I'm gone. Not to mention everyone who would be stranded without these great stories. That would be unfortunate. So I want to stay alive here to spare my friends and my parents any grief that may be caused by my passing. The wildest thing to consider is how many times it may have already happened though. I'd never truly know. Most deaths wouldn't be epic jaunts on a motorcycle or other high-octane risky activities like that. It's sad in a way to ponder that angle though. If you've died many times from an illness or something, and you just never know. I guess it is important to think about too. To remember that it's important to not be too risky in life, because people here still care about you. And they may not know or believe in quantum immortality, and even if they do, there would still be great pain in knowing that you can never interact with them directly, even though they're off doing their own thing and they probably never even know the difference. But you will. Empathy, I guess. Case file number 1281, written by Chili Dog. My lost license materialized 5 years later. In 2009, my wallet and BlackBerry were stolen at a gas station. I replaced my cards, then move on with my life. In 2014, I got a new-to-me truck. It was a 2012 fleet truck with about 30,000 miles, and I was pretty happy with it. It had been a Comcast truck in the next state over, and was in pretty good shape and had an awesome utility box on top. The dealership was near my parents' house, so I took it there, and my dad and I were combing through it finding things like the spare tire jack and stuff. We found my driver's license under the passenger seat. I figured I'd forgotten to put it away at the dealership and it fell on the floor, so I opened up my wallet to put it up. I had a license in my wallet. The license that was under the seat was the one that was stolen in 2009, in a truck from a different state that hadn't even been built at the time of the theft, and I just happened to purchase this truck 5 years later. Case notes file 1281. My lost license materialized 5 years later? So are we convinced yet, collectively, that we have guardian angels watching out for us? It isn't just life and death shielding, not at all. There's absolutely no freaking way that this is just a coincidence. Just thinking of this as a coincidence like these comedic Instagram reels where a person you know is at home, about to go to work or something, when a ball bounces, lands on their face, knocking them into the bed, somehow pulling the cover over them, then bounces over to the kitchen and kicks the bag of Doritos onto their face. The perfect error. It's not that. If that actually happened, obviously it's not some freak of physics. Nope. Some will is involved here. In this case, it's more perplexing because while there's no way it's a coincidence, in what way exactly does it help you? I can't see how returning a lost license does that, but maybe your guardian angel was seeing the landscape from a higher level than we can. Case file number 1282, written by Satch 1987. Tinsel, Eggnog, and Ghosts. We used to have a night out every Christmas with the lads from high school. We went back to one of the lads' house and were all drunk having a good time, when one of the lads pointed into the kitchen and said, "Who's that?" The kitchen was like a box room where you could see the whole room from the doorway. I had my back to the wall where it was and turned to look in. The lights were off and there was no one there. We all looked and said, "What are you looking at?" He was adamant and just pointing and just said, "No, who are those two there?" The lad whose house it was looking in and turned on the light, and again, there was no one there. And we all said, "Are you okay? What are you on about?" He said, "Look, that fella is leaning on the worktop and the other is leaning and pointing and laughing at me." We all kept saying there was no one there. After back and forth for about 10 minutes, he was describing what they were wearing, etc. And then the lad who could see these people realized we couldn't and started freaking out, tearing up and shaking uncontrollably, saying he had to get out of the house. He was shaking that much that we had to put his shoes on for him. Once he had gone and been drunk, no drugs that we knew of, we just laughed it off as him being off and on one, but the lad to whose house it was said he described his uncle and granddad, who had been long since dead, exactly how they used to stand and what clothes they were wearing. I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't there. And honestly, I still think he just had a mad episode. We have all met his granddad and uncle before they died, so it could have been some mental moment he had. To this day, anytime we mention it, he refuses to talk about it and doesn't even entertain any notion of it. Like I said, it sounds far-fetched, but that it is 100% true. I don't believe in ghosts, etc., and still think he had a moment, but it was genuinely weird and unsettling. Case notes of file 1282. Tinsel, Eggnog, and Ghosts. Plenty of reports to tell us that spirits can manifest openly in the material world. From moving objects around to multiple people seeing these spirits, or making noise sufficient to even be heard over a phone line. But here's the thing. Just because those things can happen doesn't mean that spiritual interfacing isn't a thing too. Heck, it may be easier for spirits to link up with a human mind, a human soul, than fully migrating into our plane. The latter, I'd guess, requires far more effort and energy to accomplish. These two spirits, lingering behind on Christmas, wanting a connection, but energetically tapped out and not being able to complete the voyage over here. But your buddy is there, spiritual Wi-Fi ports open, ready to interface. No harm intended, or freaking out your friend out, that's not their intent, I think. Just good old chaps wanting a bit of human living on such a holy night. It's kind of wholesome in a way, but obviously, I'd be freaked out too, and I'll feel bad about that. Bonus file written by Anonymous. My Feline Angel's Final Cuddle. I was living in Boston. I was woken up at 3 a.m. or so by my cat jumping on my bed and curling in between my calf muscles and going to sleep. My cat has done this every night since I was 5 years old. That was his spot. It was something I was very familiar with. Thing is, at the time, my cat was living with my parents on the West Coast, so I couldn't understand what the hell I just felt. But I knew it was my cat, I just figured I was dreaming. I got a call from my parents the following morning that my cat died around midnight the previous night, 3 hours behind since I was on the East Coast. Guess that was my cat traveling to Boston to come see me one last time. I wasn't dreaming, I remember it quite well. I said maybe I was dreaming because I am doubtful of myself, but thinking back, yeah, I was wide awake and realized my experience. Despite being a fun believer in ghosts, suspension of disbelief, I haven't had any other experiences other than this. This is my own experience, and I expected and appreciate the doubt, but call it what you will, my cat came to see me. Case notes for the bonus file. My Feline Angel's Final Cuddle. The question in my mind here is, was it the manifested spirit from your feline friend giving you a final cuddle, Or was it your mind somehow able to glean information that your cat had passed, and created the sensation of this cuddle session to grant itself an easing over the loss? Either could be the case. I like to think that it was your cat's spirit directly. Spirits can travel great distances instantly, and given it was fresh, I'd bet his soul had tons of energy to it in order to accomplish the last necessary voyage to comfort his favorite human. It's beautiful. And now time for the quote of the day. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much because they live in the grey twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt. This is quite a quote indeed, and I think it can be boiled down to, it's better to try and fail than never to try at all. And those failures aren't even a negative. They do checker your life, but in a good way. Without them, you wouldn't even know to appreciate victory. A lot of people are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they may have some success in life, they may try, but they'll never be able to appreciate it. So yes, live a good life, have adversity, and fail. It's a good thing. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.